I only stopped for a coffee. But then I saw her, my daughter. A grown woman of 31 was hunched over counting nickels like a terrified child. When I asked about her car, she whispered that her husband kept the keys. That single sentence turned my blood to ice. I realized right then that someone was dismantling her life piece by piece, and I was the only witness. My name is Marjorie Kincaid. I am 57 years old, a widow who has lived in Harbour Ridge long enough to know that the biting wind coming off the Great Lakes is the only thing that hits you straight in the face anymore. I built a life on the principle that I never owed anyone an explanation for how I survived or how I kept my house warm. I thought I had passed that steel backbone down to my daughter. I was wrong. The Glassway Galleria was struggling to stay relevant, filled with the echo of empty storefronts and the smell of stale pretzels. I had only stopped for a coffee, a quick jolt of caffeine before heading back to my empty house. I was not looking for a tragedy. I found one anyway. Olivia was tucked away in a dim corner near the arcade, right next to a blinking claw machine that played a manic, looping tune. My daughter is 31 years old. She holds a degree in art history. She used to walk with her chin parallel to the ground, but the woman I saw crouching on the dirty tile floor looked like a fugitive. She was digging through her purse, counting coins. 1 quarter, 2 dimes, a handful of pennies. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. I walked up behind her. She flinched as if I had struck her. "Olivia," I said. My voice sounded too loud in the cavernous space. She looked up. Her mascara was smeared, but it was the terror in her eyes that stopped my heart. She frantically tried to sweep the coins back into her bag. "Mom, you can't be here," she stammered. I looked past her, toward the parking lot doors. "Where is your car?" "Olivia, it is 20 degrees outside." She lowered her head. Her fingers trembled as she clasped them together. "Grant. He holds the keys now. He said, well, he said I drive unsafe. He says I get distracted too easily." The excuse was so flimsy it made me nauseous. Before I could respond, a security guard stepped out from the shadows near the restrooms. He did not look at me. He looked directly at my daughter. "Mrs. Mercer," the guard said, his tone flat and rehearsed. "Is everything all right? Do we need to call your husband?" It was a soft threat. I realized then that this was not a chance encounter. She was being watched, not by a spy, but by the system her husband had put in place. The guard knew her. He had likely been warned about the unstable wife wandering the mall. "She is fine," I snapped. I grabbed Olivia's hand to pull her up. She winced and tried to pull away, but the sleeve of her coat rode up just enough. I saw it. A bruise on the inside of her wrist. It was faint, turning yellow and green. It was the distinct shape of a thumb pressing down hard. It was not a blow. It was the mark of someone grabbing a phone or a set of keys and squeezing until the other person let go. "Did he do this?" I whispered. No. "Mom, please," Olivia begged, her voice cracking. She looked at the guard, then back at me. "You have to go. If he knows you saw me, if he thinks I am complaining, he will lock the accounts again." He shuts off the cards. "Mum, please?" She fumbled in her pocket and pulled out a card. It was not a Visa or a MasterCard. It was a store credit gift card for a local supermarket. A fixed amount? A ration? My daughter, who once managed an art gallery, was living on a prepaid allowance like a child. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest, heavy and permanent. Olivia started to cry, fat tears rolling down her cheeks. She gripped my arm, her nails digging in. He told me to sign. She choked out. He said it was to protect the family. But Mom, I do not know if I own anything anymore. I guided Olivia into a booth at the back of a 24-hour diner, the kind of place that smells permanently of bacon grease and sanitizer. We sat in the corner, shielded by high vinyl seats. I did not push her. I did not scream. I learned a long time ago that when you are trying to get the truth out of someone who is terrified, you do not use a hammer. You use silence. I ordered her a cup of tea and waited for her to peel back the layers of her life, one painful strip at a time. She started talking about Grant Mercer. Her husband is 34 years old, a man who describes himself as a freelance financial consultant. I have met him. He speaks in the soothing, confident rhythm of a self-help audiobook. He never raises his voice because he does not have to. He has a way of twisting reality so subtly that by the end of a conversation, you are apologizing for something he did to you. He is just trying to help me, Olivia said, her hands wrapping tightly around the warm mug. He said we had to restructure our debt. He said my car was a liability we did not need. So he sold it. I said flatly. He sold it to optimize our cash flow, she corrected me, using his words. They sounded foreign and heavy on her tongue. And my phone. The smartphone was making me anxious. Too many notifications. Grant gave me this one, to reduce distractions. She placed a battered, outdated flip phone on the table. It was not a device for an adult woman. It was a leash. And the bank accounts I asked. Olivia looked down at the table. I signed some papers. Last month. He said it was a limited power of attorney just to handle the tax filing for the year. He said I would mess up the forms if I tried to do it myself. I felt a chill run down my spine. A power of attorney is a loaded gun if you hand it to the wrong person. Since then, she whispered, I do not get mail anymore. All the bank statements. They go to his email. He says it is more secure. I watched her face carefully. Does he let you see them? If I ask, she said, her voice trembling. But then he asks why I do not trust him. He asks if I am having an episode again. He calls me his beneficiary. The word hung in the air between us. Beneficiary, not wife, not partner. A beneficiary is someone who receives things passively. It is a term used in insurance policies and wills, not in a marriage of equals. He was categorizing her. Then she dropped the real weight on me. He has a lawyer, Olivia said, tears pooling in her eyes again. Grant says my anxiety is getting worse. He says I am a danger to our future. He wants to apply for financial guardianship. I froze. I did not let my face change, but inside, my mind was racing. Financial guardianship is not something you do for a spouse who is bad at math. It is a legal nuclear option. It declares a person incompetent. It strips them of the right to spend $1 without permission. It effectively kills their civil identity. I did not slam my fist on the table. I did not tell her that her husband was a monster. I simply memorized the data. Guardianship, incompetence, anxiety. He was building a case file, not a marriage. He was documenting her decline. A decline he was manufacturing. Mom, she said, fumbling with the old phone. I have to send this. He will be wondering why I have not checked in. She turned the screen toward me. There was a message typed out in the draft folder, waiting to be sent. I'm fine. Don't get involved. It was perfect grammar. It was concise. It was cold. It was absolutely nothing like the way my daughter speaks. He wrote it. I asked. He gave me a list. She confessed. Her voice barely a whisper. Templates. For when you ask. So I do not say the wrong thing. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. She was not just being controlled, she was being erased. And the man doing it was not just a bad husband. He was a professional. I do not carry a badge. I carry a calculator and a magnifying glass for fine print. For 20 years. I have worked as a senior auditor at Northlake Compliance and Transit Audits. My job is not exciting to most people. I spend my days tracking ghost shipments, verifying fuel surcharges, and finding the tiny, boring discrepancies that signal million-dollar frauds in municipal transport contracts. I know that criminals are rarely dramatic. They are bureaucratic. They do not break down doors. They change the locks while you are sleeping. I went home that night and treated Grant Mercer exactly like a suspicious vendor. I did not scream. I opened a spreadsheet. I started with the digital footprint. In modern America, you cannot kidnap someone without leaving a trail of confirmation codes. I pulled up the shared family calendar Olivia had synced with me years ago, which she had likely forgotten to disconnect. I saw the pattern immediately. Password reset requests. Address changes. It was a timeline of administrative erasure. I called her bank's customer service line. I put on my most fragile, confused voice. The voice of an elderly mother who cannot understand technology. I am trying to send my daughter, Olivia, a little birthday money. I told the representative, but the app is confusing me. I want to make sure she gets the notification. I can help with that. Ma'am? The young man on the line said, we have a 2-factor authentication set up. The code goes to the mobile number on file ending in 49. My hand tightened on the phone. Olivia's number ended in 02. Grant's number ended in 49. Oh, I said, letting a tremor enter my voice. Is that the only number? Yes, ma'am. It was updated 3 months ago as the primary device for all security alerts. I see, I said. Thank you. I hung up. He had not just taken her phone physically, he had redirected the digital nervous system of her life. Every time a bank warned Olivia of a withdrawal, the warning went to the thief. I dug deeper. I found a public listing for a limited liability company that Grant had mentioned in passing. It led me to an intermediary holding account. The account was technically in Olivia's name, which meant she held the tax liability, but the administrative email address was G. Mercer Advisory. It was a classic shell game. He was parking assets in her name to hide them, likely from his own creditors, while retaining the keys to move the money whenever he pleased. I went to a community legal forum, typing in phrases from the documents Olivia had described. I found a thread about guardianship abuse, buried in the comments. A woman from a neighboring state mentioned a financial advisor who used love bombing to gain access to estate planning. She did not name him directly, but she used initials. G.M.? She called him a charismatic predator. The phrasing made my skin crawl. He was using a template. My daughter was not his soulmate. She was his next host. I opened the App Store on my phone and downloaded a secure timestamping tool. It does not record conversations illegally. It simply logs events with an immutable digital seal. I began to build the timeline. Call from Grant, 6:15 p.m. Duration 2 minutes. Olivia's text regarding blocked card, 6:30 p. Grant's follow-up, text 6:35 p.m. I was creating a map of the coercion loop. Then came the detail that made the picture complete. I called the bank back a few hours later, intending to ask about the specific date of the phone number change. I got a different representative this time. I am checking on the account for Olivia Kincaid. I said, I am her mother. One moment, the woman said. She tapped on her keyboard. Oh, I see the note here. You are Mrs. Mercer, correct, the emergency contact. I stopped breathing for a second. Excuse me? The emergency contact listed is Marjorie Mercer, she said cheerfully, updated on October 12th. October 12th. That was the day Grant sold Olivia's car. Yes, I said, my voice cold and steady. That is me. I hung up and stared at the wall. He had changed my last name in the system. He had rebranded me. It was a small error to a bank teller, but to an auditor, it was a flashing red light. He was not just isolating Olivia from me. He was rewriting the narrative of who I was in relation to her. By changing my name to his, he subtly implied that I was part of his clan, under his umbrella, or perhaps he intended to impersonate me later. It was not just a bad marriage. It was a hostile takeover. He was systematically proving that Olivia Kincaid did not exist as a competent adult, and he was preparing to stand before a judge and argue that he was the only person on earth qualified to manage the remains of her life. Langford and Rye Advocacy was not a place you went to when you were winning. It was a small, cramped office on the second floor of a brick building that smelled faintly of damp wool and old toner. I liked it immediately. It did not try to sell hope. It sold strategy. Tessa Langford, the lead attorney, was 38 years old and looked like she slept about 4 hours a night. She sat behind a desk piled high with case files, listening to me with the intense focus of a bomb disposal technician. It is a textbook model. Mrs. Kincaid, Tessa said, leaning forward. We call it coercive control mixed with paper abuse. It is very common, and it is incredibly hard to stop because the law assumes a husband has his wife's best interests at heart until proven otherwise. He is setting the stage for a guardianship petition. He is creating a paper trail that says she is incompetent. I nodded. I had suspected it. But hearing a professional confirm, it made the danger real. So how do we stop him? Do we file a restraining order? Tessa said sharply. If we file now, he will claim you are an interfering mother trying to break up a happy marriage. He will use his evidence of Olivia's anxiety to get an emergency order against you. We do not attack him yet. We let him expose himself. We spent the next hour mapping out the trap. We needed to prove 3 things: that he was hiding assets, that he was manufacturing her incompetence, and that her signatures were coerced. To do that, we had to build a shadow file, a clean identity for Olivia that Grant did not know about. When Olivia arrived, she looked like a ghost. I had convinced her to come under the pretense of getting lunch, but when she saw the law office sign, she started to hyperventilate. Mom, I can't. Grant says lawyers just complicate things. She stammered, her eyes darting to the door. Grant is not here, I said, guiding her to a chair. We are just opening a bank account. Olivia, one that has your name on it, just yours. We laid out the documents. A new checking account at a credit union Grant did not use. A referral for a voluntary psychological evaluation with a neutral doctor to prove she was sound of mind. Olivia stared at the papers, her hands trembling in her lap. He just wants us to be safe. Mum. He handles the stress so I do not have to. If I do this, I am betraying him. I looked at my daughter. She was 31, but she sounded 6. Safe for whom? Olivia, I asked quietly. Is he protecting you from the world, or is he protecting his money from you? She did not answer. She picked up the pen. We needed her to sign a privacy release form so I could request her transaction history directly from the bank, bypassing Grant's digital blockade. She lowered the pen to the paper. The tip hovered over the signature line. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the table. It was a harsh, vibrating sound that made us all jump. Olivia looked at the screen and went pale. It is him, she whispered. I looked at the message. It was not a question. It was a command. Where are you? Send location. He knows, Olivia said, her voice rising in panic. He gets alerts when I am near certain places, or maybe he is tracking the GPS. She was not shaking because of a panic disorder. She was shaking because she was being hunted. Sign the paper. Olivia? I said. My voice was low and hard. Sign it, and then turn the phone off. She scribbled her name, the lines jagged and weak. As soon as she finished, I took the phone from the table and powered it down. The screen went black. Tessa looked at me. He will come looking for her. If he has tracking software on that device, he knows she is in a law office. Let him look, I said, putting the signed document into my briefcase. But he won't find a victim this time. We need to get her off his grid. Tonight. I realized then that legal maneuvering was not enough. I had to sever the digital umbilical cord he had wrapped around her neck, and I had to do it without him realizing the war had already started. I invited the enemy into my home on a Tuesday evening. It was a tactical decision. I needed to see Grant Mercer in his natural habitat. Or rather, I needed to see how he behaved when he thought he had successfully tamed his environment. I roasted a chicken and set the table with the heavy silver cutlery that had belonged to my grandmother. It was a domestic scene, warm and inviting. But my pulse was hammering against my wrist like a warning drum. Grant arrived at exactly 7 o'clock. He looked impeccable in a navy blazer that fit him a little too well. He held up a bottle of red wine with the casual confidence of a man who owns the room before he even steps inside. "Hi, Mom," he said, flashing a smile that was all teeth and charm. "I brought a Pinot Noir. It has excellent notes of cherry. I know how much you appreciate the finer things." He called me Mom. It was a calculated territorial pissing contest. He was asserting his place in the lineage, implying that we were a unit, a closed circle that he now led. Olivia stood behind him, looking small in a dress that was 2 sizes too big. She kept her eyes on the floor. Dinner was a masterclass in suffocation. Every time Olivia opened her mouth to speak, Grant was there to close it for her. I was thinking about applying to the... Olivia started, her voice barely audible over the clinking of forks. "Honey, you are forgetting the timeline," Grant interrupted smoothly, pouring more wine into my glass. "We discussed this. You are going to focus on your wellness routine first. Olivia gets confused about her priorities sometimes. It is just the anxiety talking." He smiled at me, a conspiratorial look that invited me to join him in pitying my daughter. I set my fork down. The metal hit the china with a deliberate clink. "Speaking of wellness," I said, keeping my voice light, "I was surprised to hear you sold her car. That seems drastic for a little anxiety." Grant did not flinch. He cut a piece of chicken with surgical precision. It was a safety issue. "Marjorie, her reflexes are shot." The doctor strongly advised against her driving until she stabilizes. Which doctor, I asked. The question hung in the air. Dr. Aris, Grant said. The name came out too fast. I would like to see the report, I said. If she is that impaired, we need a second opinion. I can pay for a neurologist. Grant blinked. It was a single, microscopic delay in his processing speed. He had expected me to be emotional, not bureaucratic. It is confidential. Obviously, he said, his smile tightening at the edges. HIPAA regulations are very strict. Mum, I am just trying to protect her privacy. He pivoted the conversation instantly. Actually, that reminds me. I was looking at the market trends. You are approaching retirement age. Have you diversified your portfolio? I could take a look at your assets. I have some strategies for tax efficiency that could save you thousands. He was not just guarding the gate. He was trying to expand the fence to include my wallet. Then came the crack in the porcelain. Olivia reached for the salt and knocked over her water glass. The liquid spread across the tablecloth. It was a minor accident, the kind that happens in every home. Grant slammed his hand on the table. The sound cracked like a whip. Damn it. Paige. Look what you did. The room went dead silent. Olivia froze, her hand hovering over the spilled water. I stared at him. Paige, I asked softly. Grant's face went blank, then instantly reassembled into a mask of apology. He laughed, a dry, hollow sound. Sorry. I was thinking of a client, a difficult client. My brain is fried from work. I'm sorry. Liv, let me get a towel. He was smooth, but the damage was done. Paige, it was not a random slip. You do not scream the wrong name in a moment of reflex anger unless that name is sitting right at the front of your mind. I filed the name away in the steel trap of my memory. As the evening wound down, I went to the kitchen to fetch dessert. The door swung shut, but it did not latch completely. Through the crack. I looked back into the dining room. Olivia was in the bathroom. Grant was standing by my small writing desk in the corner of the living room. He was not looking at the family photos. He had his phone out. He was snapping rapid photographs of the papers I had left on the blotter, my utility bills. A stray bank statement. The deed to my house. He was not just controlling Olivia, he was casing the joint. The next morning, the conference room at Langford and Rye became a dissection table. We were not cutting open bodies. We were flaying the lie that was Grant Mercer's career. Tessa pulled up the state business registry on the projector. It was pathetic. He is a ghost. Marjorie, Tessa said, tapping the screen with a pen. Mercer Strategic Solutions is not a firm. It is a registered agent service linked to a post office box in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner. He has no securities license. He has no fiduciary accreditation. He is playing a banker the way a child plays a doctor. I sat in the corner with my laptop, hunting down the name that had slipped through Grant's teeth during dinner. Paige. It did not take long. The internet never forgets a lawsuit. I found a Paige Hollowell in Ohio. 3 years ago, she had filed a civil suit against a former partner for investment fraud and unauthorized account access. The details were a mirror image of my daughter's life. He had isolated her, taken over her passwords for security, and then drained her savings into a joint investment vehicle that vanished. The man in the suit was listed as G. Mercer. He has done this before, I said, my voice flat. He is a serial offender. Tessa nodded, but she was focused on a document spread out on the table. It was the power of attorney Olivia had signed. Tessa was looking at the signature through a magnifying glass. "Olivia?" Tessa said gently. "Look at this. The downstroke on the K. It is heavy. Too heavy." Olivia hugged her arms to her chest, refusing to look. "I signed it. I told you I signed it. It does not look like a forgery," Tessa said. "It looks like a guided hand." "Did he hold the pen with you?" Olivia squeezed her eyes shut. Her breathing hitched. It was 2 a.m, she whispered, the words tumbling out. "He woke me up. He was standing over the bed with the papers. He said, 'Sign this. Live. Sign it so I can fix the mess you made. Sign it and go back to sleep. I will explain tomorrow.'" I just wanted him to stop staring at me. I felt a wave of nausea. That was not consent. That was a nightmare. "We have him on coercion," I said. "Not yet," Tessa warned. "We need the money trail." She pointed to the bank statements I had obtained. There was a recurring transfer of $500 every week, leaving Olivia's account and entering an entity called the Mercer Family Shield Trust. It sounded protective. It sounded responsible. "I ran the trust deed," Tessa said. Her face was grim. "Grant is the trustee, but he is not the ultimate beneficiary. The trust is managed by a law firm here in Harbour Ridge." "Which firm?" I asked. "Creel and Associates," Tessa said. "Specifically, Owen Creel." The name hit the room like a stone. Owen Creel was a local attorney known for handling high-volume elder guardianship cases. He was the go-to guy if you wanted to put your grandmother in a home and sell her house quickly. "It is a pipeline," Tessa said, leaning back in her chair. "Grant finds the victims and destabilizes them. Creel handles the legal paperwork to strip their rights. The trust hides the assets, so the court sees a destitute person who needs a guardian. They split the proceeds as management fees. This is not a marriage, Marjorie. It is a racketeering operation." My first instinct was to call the police. I wanted sirens. I wanted handcuffs. But I knew better. Financial crimes are complex. If we went to the police now, Grant would produce the signed documents. He would show the medical notes about Olivia's anxiety. He would claim he was a devoted husband managing a difficult wife, and the police would call it a civil matter. "We cannot sue him yet," I said, standing up and walking to the window. "If we sue, they will bury us in motions. They will drain Olivia's remaining sanity before we ever see a judge. We need them to make a mistake. We need them to get greedy." I turned back to the two women. Olivia looked terrified, but I looked at her with a calm I did not feel. "Grant thinks I am a foolish old widow with a retirement portfolio I do not understand," I said. "He was sniffing around my finances at dinner. So, I am going to give him what he wants. I am going to invent a fortune, and I am going to leave it unguarded. I was going to build a trap out of money. The only thing Grant Mercer truly loved, and I was going to wait for him to step into it." I sat Olivia down on my sofa, holding her hands in mine. Her fingers were cold. We had passed the point of comforting hugs and empty reassurances. We were now in the phase of surgical necessity. "I am not asking you to hate him," I said, looking straight into her red-rimmed eyes. "I know you still love the man you thought he was. I just need you to remain awake long enough to save yourself." Olivia nodded slowly. She looked fragile, but there was a flicker of something new in her expression, a spark of survival. We reviewed the plan Tessa had drawn up. It was a strategy of compliance. Olivia would stop fighting. She would feign total surrender to Grant's demands for the guardianship. She would agree that she was too anxious to handle money, but she would attach a condition, a small administrative hurdle that seemed harmless. She would demand that the capacity evaluation and the long-term financial plan be filed strictly according to the state deadlines. Tessa had prepared a list of questions for Olivia to send via email. They were specific legal inquiries about the trust structure and the beneficiary designation. "You have to send this exactly as written," Tessa had instructed. "Every time he replies in writing to avoid a direct answer, he is building our evidence of evasion." While Olivia typed the email with shaking hands, I made a call to an old contact from my days auditing transport contracts. He was a digital forensics specialist who usually contracted for the county. I did not ask him to hack anything. I simply asked him to analyze the metadata of the documents Grant had already forwarded to me. I wanted to know who created the files, when they were modified, and if the IP addresses matched the physical locations Grant claimed to be in. We needed to prove that the independent doctors and lawyers were all operating from the same digital neighborhood. Later that afternoon, I watched Olivia practice in front of the hallway mirror. She slumped her shoulders. She practiced a look of vague confusion, a slight furrow of the brow that suggested she was overwhelmed. "I am just so tired." "Grant," she rehearsed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I just want you to take care of it." It was a terrifying performance. It was too good. It reminded me of how much of her personality she had already suppressed just to survive him. "That is enough," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. "You are ready." Then came the surprise. Olivia checked her phone, which we had reactivated to maintain the illusion of normalcy. She frowned. "Mom," she said, looking up. "Why are you meeting him? What, he just added an appointment to our shared calendar." "Coffee with Marjorie. 2 o'clock tomorrow, at the Bean and Leaf." I felt a cold smile touch my lips. He was bypassing the victim to secure the witness. He wanted to bring me into the fold, to make me an accomplice in my daughter's erasure. "He thinks he is going to charm me," I said. "He wants to make sure the meddling mother is neutralized." I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. I brought a thick manila folder with me. Inside, I had stuffed a stack of old, meaningless tax forms from 20 years ago and some printed recipes. It looked heavy. It looked like a portfolio of assets waiting to be managed. I placed it conspicuously on the table. Grant walked in at 2 o'clock sharp. He wore a cashmere sweater and that same practiced look of concern. "Marjorie," he said, sitting down and eyeing the folder immediately. "Thank you for coming. I know this is a difficult time for the family." "It is," I said, keeping my hands folded on top of the papers. "I am worried about her. Grant. She seems fading." "Exactly," he said, leaning in. "That is why I wanted to talk to you. The legal process for the guardianship. It can be slow and expensive. The courts are clogged." He took a sip of his coffee, his eyes never leaving the folder under my hands. He was calculating the net worth of the woman sitting across from him. "I just want what is best for her." I lied. "Then help me help her," Grant said, his voice dropping to a confidential murmur. "If the family is united, the judge does not look so closely. If you were to sign a statement, a simple affidavit confirming that you have seen her instability, that you agree she cannot manage her affairs, the court will expedite the ruling." He reached into his bag and pulled out a crisp document. "It would save us months," he added. "And then I can focus on getting her the care she needs. And perhaps I could help you organize your estate planning so you do not have to worry about these things either. I looked at the paper. It was a confession. He was asking me to perjure myself to bypass due process. He was asking me to sign away my daughter's freedom to save him time. I looked up at him and smiled, a polite, grandmotherly smile that did not reach my eyes. "I will take it home and read it," I said. I saw the disappointment flicker in his eyes, but he nodded. He thought he had me. He had no idea that he had just handed me the shovel I would use to bury him. The petition for financial guardianship landed on Tessa's desk with a heavy thud. It was a masterpiece of fiction. Grant had filed the paperwork claiming that Olivia was suffering from severe cognitive decline and was prone to impulsive spending that endangered the marital assets. The document labelled my daughter as a person with a high risk of self-harm financially. It was a sterile, legal way of saying she was too stupid to own a wallet. Attached to the petition was a psychological evaluation from a clinic called Serenity Mind Services, signed by a doctor I had never heard of, diagnosing her with incapacity due to acute manic episodes. Tessa did not blink. She immediately filed our counter-motion. We attached the independent evaluation Olivia had secretly undergone the week before. That report came from a board-certified psychiatrist with 30 years of experience, and it stated clearly that Olivia was fully competent, oriented, and showing classic symptoms of coercive control trauma. I went to work on the Dr. Grant had used. I pulled public court records for every guardianship case Owen Creel had handled in the last 5 years. The pattern was impossible to miss. In 12 different cases where Creel successfully petitioned to strip an elderly or vulnerable person of their rights. The medical evaluation was signed by the exact same physician from Serenity Mind Services. They were running a rubber stamp factory. Then Grant tried to drop the curtain. On Friday morning, Olivia's primary phone went dead. The screen simply went black and displayed a SIM card error message. At the same time, Grant posted a status update on his social media, tagging Olivia. "Please keep our family in your prayers. Olivia is taking some time away to focus on her mental health treatment. She will be offline for a while. I ask that everyone respect her privacy while I handle things at home." It was a digital cage. He was telling the world she was sick so that if she tried to reach out, people would treat her like a patient off her meds. But 5 minutes later, the cheap, prepaid flip phone I had hidden in Olivia's winter boot buzzed in my pocket. "Mum," Olivia whispered. He shut it off. He told me the service provider made a mistake, but I saw him on his laptop. He is smiling. "Mum." He's whistling in the kitchen. "Stay calm," I told her. "Use the burner only when he is in the shower. We are almost there." The attack on me began an hour later. I received a notification from the Harbour Ridge Community Forum. It was a post from a neighbour, but the comments were where the poison lived. Someone had started a thread about toxic in-laws interfering in marriages. "It is sad when a mother cannot let go," one comment read. "I heard Marjorie Kincaid is trying to drive her son-in-law away so she can control her daughter's money herself." I stared at the screen. He was projecting his own sins onto me. He was isolating the rescuer so the victim would have nowhere to run. Then came the betrayal that hurt the most. A woman named Sarah, who had been Olivia's best friend since college, replied to the thread. "Grant is a saint for putting up with this. Olivia has been unstable for months. Her mother needs to step back." I felt a sharp pang in my chest, but I did not reply. I did not engage. I simply took a screenshot. I dug into my files. I remembered that Grant had mentioned helping Sarah with a debt consolidation loan 2 years ago. I did a quick property search. Grant held a lien on Sarah's small business. She was not a bad friend. She was a hostage. He owned her debt, so he owned her loyalty. I let the insults pile up. Every lie they told was another brick in the wall of evidence proving a coordinated campaign of isolation. The breakthrough arrived at 4 in the afternoon. Tessa called me, her voice tight with adrenaline. "Check your secure email," she said. We got it. I opened the file. It was a forwarded email chain. Grant had been careless. He had synced his business email to a cloud server that he had once shared with Olivia for tax purposes, a server he thought he had locked her out of, but which our digital forensics expert had accessed using her original credentials. The email was from Grant to Owen Creel. The timestamp was 8 in the morning. Subject: acceleration. The body of the email was short and panic-induced. "We need to push the hearing date up. The old lady Kincaid is asking too many questions. I think she is moving her assets. If we do not get the guardianship order by next week, I cannot access the trust to cover the shortfalls. Push the judge. Tell him it is an emergency. It was not about love. It was not about safety. It was about covering a shortfall." I looked at the IP address listed in the metadata. It matched the Wi-Fi at his house. I looked at the sender. It was him. He just handed us the knife. I said to the empty room. The night before the hearing felt less like the eve of a battle and more like the waiting room of a funeral home. The air in my living room was thick with unspoken dread. Olivia was pacing the floor, her footsteps silent on the carpet, wearing a path between the window and the sofa. She stopped and looked at me, her face pale and drawn. "If I do this, if I actually stand up there and say these things," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I will lose everything, not just the money. I will lose my friends. I will lose my dignity. People will look at me and see a victim. They will see a woman who was too stupid to keep her own checkbook." I stood up and walked over to her. I needed to break the pedestal she had put me on. She thought I was made of iron, but she needed to know that iron is forged in fire. "Sit down," I said. I sat beside her. "You think I was born this way? You think I always knew how to audit a lie?" She looked at me, confused. "Your father," I said quietly. "He was a good man in many ways, but for the first 5 years of our marriage, I did not have access to the bank account. He gave me cash for groceries on Monday and on Friday. He asked for the receipts. If the change did not match, he did not hit me. He just stopped talking to me for 2 days. I felt exactly what you feel now, the shame, the feeling that I was a child in a grown woman's body." Olivia stared at me. I had never told her this. I got out. I continued, not by screaming, but by learning the law of the world in silence. I read every document he left on the desk. I learned where the power was hidden. I am not asking you to be fearless, Olivia. I am asking you to use your shame as fuel. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was handwritten. "This is not for the judge," I said. "This is for you. Read it when you feel like you are disappearing." It was a personal declaration. It simply listed who she was: a graduate, a gallery manager, a woman who could calculate the tip at a restaurant without asking permission, a human being with rights that were not granted by a husband. Olivia held the paper, and for the first time in weeks, her shoulders dropped an inch. Tessa called at 9 o'clock. She ran through the list of witnesses like a general checking ammunition. We had the digital forensics expert who would trace the IP addresses. We had the independent psychiatrist who would testify to Olivia's competence. We had the bank employee who was willing to state under oath that the two-factor authentication had been changed to Grant's number. It was a solid wall of facts. But we needed a weapon. The weapon rang my phone at midnight. The number was from out of state. I answered, expecting a wrong number. "Mrs. Kincaid," a voice asked. It was a woman's voice, shaky but resolved. "This is Paige Hollowell." I gripped the phone. "I know who you are." "I heard you are going to court," Paige said. "I wanted to warn you. He does not just take the money. He takes the right to live. He makes you feel like you are crazy until you actually are. He took 3 years of my life. Help us stop him." I said. "I have something." She said, "I sent it to your email. It is a recording. Legal. One-party consent state. He was drunk. He was bragging to his brother on speakerphone." I opened my laptop while she spoke. The file downloaded. I pressed play. Grant's voice filled the room, slurring but arrogant. "The law does not care about truth. Man. The court always believes the one who knows how to speak. She stutters when she is scared. I just have to look calm. I own the narrative." It was sickening. It was perfect. I looked at the screen. Bringing Paige in was a risk. Grant would claim she was a bitter ex-girlfriend, a stalker trying to ruin his reputation. He would paint a picture of a conspiracy of hysterical women. But without her, the judge might just see a bad marriage. With her, he would see a predator's timeline. I made the decision. "Tessa," I texted. "We are using Paige, but not at the beginning. We bring her in when the judge asks for character references. We use her as the mirror." I turned to Olivia. She was watching me, terrifyingly young in her oversized pajamas. "You do not need to perform tomorrow," I told her. "You do not need to win by shouting. You win by telling the truth. And when he lies, do not get angry. Just wait. We are going to let him talk until he hangs himself." The courtroom in Harbour Ridge County Court smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. Grant sat at the defense table looking like a man who had already won. He wore his navy suit, checking his watch with the air of a CEO inconvenienced by a parking ticket. His lawyer, Owen Creel, projected the image of a weary protector, ready to save a family from itself. They expected a quick administrative hearing. They expected a rubber stamp. Judge Judith Caro did not look like a rubber stamp. She was a woman in her 60s with eyes that had seen every variation of domestic lie imaginable. She flipped through the file, silence stretching out until the air conditioning sounded like a roar. Then she looked over her glasses directly at Grant. "Mr. Mercer," Judge Caro said, her voice surprisingly soft but distinct. "In the last 12 months, how many times have you paid your wife in cash, and why?" Grant blinked. He stood up, smoothing his tie, his charm faltering for a fraction of a second. "Your Honor, I do not understand the relevance. We share finances. I handle the bills because Olivia, well, she gets overwhelmed." "Objection," Owen Creel said, standing up halfway. "Relevance. This is a competency hearing, Your Honor." "Overruled." The judge snapped without looking at him. "It goes to the heart of asset control. Answer the question." "Mr. Mercer, I give her an allowance," Grant stammered, "for her own good." That was the opening Tessa needed. She stood up and laid out the timeline like a deck of cards. She displayed the unauthorized change of the two-factor authentication. She showed the metadata from the emails. She revealed the 60-page dossier of guardianship applications supported by the exact same doctor, using the exact same paragraphs of medical text. Then Olivia stood up. She did not cry. She did not shake. She looked small, but she stood straight. "He woke me up at 2 a.m, Olivia told the court, her voice steady. He held the pen. He told me, "Sign this, or we lose the house." He told me I was broken. He told me I was dangerous to our future. I believed him because he is my husband. Grant shook his head theatrically, looking at the judge with a pained smile, as if to say, "See, she is delusional." But we were not done. Tessa opened the doors at the back of the room. Paige Hollowell walked in. The colour drained from Grant's face. It was the first time I saw true fear in his eyes. Paige did not scream. She simply handed a document to the bailiff. It was a contract from 3 years ago. It was identical to the one Grant had forced Olivia to sign, down to the font size and the clause about a family shield trust. "It is a template." "Your Honour," Tessa said, "Mr. Mercer does not have a marriage. He has a business model." Owen Creel jumped up, his face flushing red. "This is ambush. The assets in the Mercer Trust are perfectly secure in the Omega Ledger," and he stopped. The room went dead silent. The Omega Ledger Judge Caro asked, leaning forward, "That entity is not listed in your disclosure." Mr. Creel. Creel had slipped. In his panic to defend the structure, he had named the laundering vessel where the money actually went. I stood up then. I walked to Tessa and handed her the final piece of paper. It was the affidavit Grant had tried to make me sign in the coffee shop. "Your Honour," Tessa said, "Mr. Mercer attempted to coerce Mrs. Kincaid into perjury to expedite this fraud. He is not protecting Olivia Kincaid. He is liquidating her." Judge Caro looked at the papers. She looked at Grant, who was now gripping the table, his knuckles white. She looked at Creel, who was frantically shuffling documents to hide his hands. The gavel came down. It sounded like a gunshot. "The petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice," Judge Caro ruled. Her voice was ice. "I am issuing an immediate order of protection for Olivia Kincaid. And Mr. Creel, you will surrender your files to the State Bar Association by 5 o'clock today." She turned her gaze to Grant. "And from this moment, Mr. Mercer, you are no longer a guardian. You are a subject of criminal investigation. Bailiff, please ensure Mrs. Kincaid and her daughter are escorted to their vehicle." Grant turned to Olivia. He looked desperate, his eyes pleading. The mask completely gone. "Liv," he whispered. "Liv, please." Olivia looked at him. She did not flinch. She did not apologize. She simply turned her back on him and walked toward the door. For the first time in her adult life, she did not ask for permission to exist. Thanks so much for listening to this story. I really want to know where you guys are tuning in from today. Drop a comment below with your city or country. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this takedown, please smash that like button. Hit the hype button to help the algorithm push this video to more people. And don't forget to subscribe to Nora Revenge Stories for more realistic drama. Stay safe out there.